point out to you that the evidence this committee has taken is that even if it doesn't push a particular service over the line, so clearly we now have evidence that there are a number of airport routes that are now subject to serious doubt, and regional air routes. But even in circumstances where they're not subject to doubt, the fare gets passed on to the consumers within these townships, and that we saw in Mount Gambier reduces air travel. It reduces and the air travel is the lifeblood of these communities, and so I think the analysis has to not just be limited to stopping the particular airlines from ceasing services, but looking more broadly at even the ones that survive. What is the impact that the government imposition on this has on those communities? I can't.
Home Affairs left me with the impression that, as a convention, it's one thing to fund hardware and assets to put them in, and so on. But the impression I got, and the colleagues will comment, they're both there, beyond that, it really wasn't a space for government to be thinking about socialising the costs, additional costs, because you happen to be a small airport and it was going to impact on you greater than another. They even admitted that they hadn't contemplated if an airport, which started out as a tin shed and was built on over the years, didn't have the space and they have to do a physical extension, and there is one airport that's got to do that, $1.2 million. Yeah. There's no money from the government for that. It's just they come and drop the baby. They don't leave any bottles or teats, nothing. It's just take care of yourselves from there. And the further out you are, the more vulnerable you are, the higher your need and reliance on this, the bigger the impact on it. And I'll tell you what I'm interested in. I'm not even going to burden Ms Spence with the question about, have you said to them, hey, whoever that is you're giving advice to in the government, hey Fred, there's airports likely to close and services likely to stop. I'd love for you to have given that advice, and I'd love to know what the response was, because we know what the response is. That's absolutely nothing. This needs to be elevated, and if government doesn't do it, we'll do it.
I agree that there appears to be some information that would be very useful, and I'll just go back to Mr Kennedy's offer to Senator Patrick, and I'll just repeat it without verbling Dr Kennedy. I think it was, look, if you can provide some airports, and I think in the context of the chair, to provide airports of a different size, from a very small airport as we go up. And I can tell you, I know that Senator McCarthy and myself, when we moved later to hardening Nullumboy to, the additional, it has an impact, and there's no doubt about it. But it will have an impact in a different way on different sizes of airports. So sure. Perhaps you can provide for Mr Kennedy an actual place, perhaps half a dozen, whatever, that are representative of smaller and larger sizes, and they will look at. If it's already been done, well, they'll provide that into those particular places and provide it to the committee in the context of what they believe the impact will be on the ongoing running of that airport. So they'll have to actually speak to the management of the airport, have a look at their pricing of the airport. So that it's a bit of a Pantene answer. It won't happen overnight, but it's an important question that deserves an answer.
Well, we appreciate it.
Minister, just to help you out in that regard, the department has provided to this committee on a confidential basis a list of every airport that it will be affected by this, and I'm sure your department could get access to that.
Just for the basis of rounding this out, rather than us sort of go through and guess the ones. If you can provide us some of those lists that can be of a slightly different size, that would be very useful. And I was quite say to the committee. We'll have a look at that half dozen or so, or whatever the number is, to ascertain specifically about the financial impact on those airports.
But there are two aspects to it. There's the impact it has on the airline in its decision making to continue operating the route, but there's also another economic impact on the community. Well, so I think there's two people.
We've heard that, and they're two separate matters that can be investigated with each example. and an answer can be provided with each example. The example will be a place that is an airport.
All right, we appreciate that. Thank you. Senator?
Thank you.
Is your work here done?
Can I just make one statement?
Is
Frustrating.
that one, your one or
Yeah,
one of the
no,
ones that
yeah,
are
me
5 or
one.
6?
The
Your one?
frustrating
Right.
part is this is not the first time we've talked about that. The impact, this is not the first government department we've talked about this. We've spoken about this probably about the third, fourth or fifth time in an inquiry we're doing. Can someone just put an alarm clock in the Minister's office and wake him up?
Well, we got 2 people who I trust have now undertaken, Minister Scullion and Mr Kennedy. So I'm going to go with them. I'll have a bob each way on them. Hope to get enough for a cab and a Chinese feed on the way home. Okay.
You didn't look too confident there, Senator Still.
I've got no.
You don't worry about him.
I'm having great frustration with the Minister. The office listens to all this all the time and they're just hoping it goes away. I wish their staff would just wake him up and say, Minister, we've got some serious problems here. And it ain't just Labor trying to start a fight.
All right, thank you.
Wake up, will you, Minister, for God's sake.